Hey everyone, it's been a while since I made a video. I've been meaning to make a new update video on the build here for a few weeks at least, and it's been about 4 months since the last time I made an update video, and that's what this is going to be. It's going to be a video where you can see all the things that have been changed since that last update video, where it's all going to be in one spot so you don't have to scroll through a bunch of hours worth of live streams and whatnot. So I'm going to be talking about all the things, all the major things at least. The real minor stuff probably won't get shown. But all the major things that I've been working on, either on camera or off camera since then, will be talked about here. I'm going to try my best to keep it as brief as possible, but there are quite a few things I need to talk about, so it might be a little bit longer. Now, for people who've been following the project for a while probably know that I like to keep a lot of areas or parts of the build that I'm working on a secret. For when the world download goes out, so it's a nice surprise. Just before anyone asks, I'm not sure when the map will be available. It'll just be done when it's ready and when I think it's good enough for people to spend their time playing it. But I will be showing one brand new room that I finished recently that I've never talked about, I've never shown it before, so that'll be a nice little treat, I hope, to make sitting through this video worth it. But yeah, if you've watched any of my streams over the past few months, some of this stuff will look familiar. Before I go any further, I want to mention this video is not scripted, so I'm going to do my best to keep it on track. For the first part of this video, I'm mainly going to be focusing on the exterior. A surprising amount of work has been done to just update it, renovate it, make it look better. And then there was a big expansion done on the back, which I'll get to here in a minute. But first I'm going to talk about what I like to call little sub-buildings that make up the exterior. I basically rebuilt most of them. So the very first thing I did, and this is the most minor change, is on this front lobby building here. I actually made it wider by 2 blocks, so it got expanded by 1 block on this side, 1 block on this side. And that's just because I was trying to make the proportions look a little bit better. My facade here was a little bit too skinny, so adding those 2 blocks makes it look more accurate to the movie. So I'm happy with that. The next thing happens to do with these pillars. So these pillars are kind of a recurring item that are placed around the factory. They're also on the front gate here. And originally, the pillars I had on the front walls, as well as these pillars that make up the gate, were exactly the same. They were the same width, the coloring was the same. And I was looking at the movie one day and I realized that I sort of messed up doing that, because the pillars on the gate here are actually supposed to be a little bit smaller, mainly in width, so they should be narrower than the ones behind it. For a few reasons, I didn't really want to redo the ones on the gate here, mainly because if I rebuilt this pillar on both sides, it would change the dimensions of this gate, which means this effect of the opening and closing gate would have to be redone, and this isn't done in-game. It's a lot of sort of coding work and resource pack work that I didn't want to have to make my friend redo. So I left these alone and instead decided I was going to change the ones in the factory here. So basically they're the same design, I just made them 2 or 3 blocks wide or something like that. And what I also did was I added in the very subtle striping that are present on these pillars, and only these pillars. So if you look at the movie, you can see real close that the texture of the pillars here alternate between a dark and a light color. And this is not seen on the entire build, it's really just focused on these pillars here. So I decided to do that by replacing little strips with some deep slate tiles, just to make it look a little bit darker. Another small change happens to do with the loading bays. The first one is that I added in the little rain downspouts that drain from the roof down to the ground there. In the movie, if you look, you'll see that every one of these little pillars has a downspout, and I never had that on my build, so I decided that it was a very simple thing to do, and I'm just going to put that in. So that only took a few minutes, but it makes it look a lot better. Maybe a little bit more noticeable is that I redid the letters on top of the loading docks that spell out Wonka. So before, I had the letters here, but they were actually just done with banners. So I had a banner hanging on each spot with the letter on each banner. They were a little bit too small, and what I really didn't like is that if you go too far away, they would despawn. So if you were standing over here and you looked at the loading dock on the other side, you wouldn't see the letters at all. We were thinking of ways to solve that. Eventually, we decided that we would maybe do like elemental blocks with the Axiom mod that allows you to basically, spawn in different shapes, different blocks, and you can really modify them any way you want. So we thought about doing that, but I actually found that I just happened to make these little areas big enough, just big enough that I could fit in block letters just using, mangrove planks and stairs. So it was just enough space. If it was one block shorter, I wouldn't have enough room to do it, but I think it looks good. I think it's more accurate now to the size of the letters that you see in the movie. So that's kind of the courtyard here. Those are the main things that have changed. I also redid this little design here a little bit. My original version was a little bit too small, but due to the scale that I built this factory, I don't really have the room to make it look as big and as curved as it really should be. But I did spend some time trying to tinker it a little bit to make it look a little bit better. So if you compare this to images or videos before I changed it, I think you'll agree that it looks better than it used to. Moving on from the courtyard, probably the largest thing that I redid was this building here. And I always like to refer to this building as the face, just because I think it looks like a face with two eyes and a mouth smiling here. My original design, I think, still looked pretty good. But going back and looking at the movie, it was becoming more apparent that my design had some flaws to it that I really wanted to fix. And that actually meant that I had to basically rebuild the entire thing from the ground up because I needed to change some of the dimensions of it. So I wasn't able to just do a quick fix with it like I was with some of the stuff down there. So I had to actually delete the whole thing and rebuild it. I think what ended up happening was I believe I made it 3 blocks wider. So this, you can kind of think of the half circle here on the front. That's all it really is. It's 3 blocks wider now, which meant I was able to make these buildings up here a little bit wider as well. Just so the size looks a little bit better proportionally. It's really hard to notice. Something else I did was I added in these little bands that go across the window glass. Now in the movie, these are sort of represented like this. However, it's actually on each individual glass pane has a little protruding band that goes around it. And there's really no way to do that well in Minecraft. If I wanted to really do that, I'd have to put one of these like on every single block, and that just wouldn't really look good. It would look too clunky. So I compromised and decided just to do 3 of them evenly spaced apart. And I think it does look better than without them. Perhaps the 2 most noticeable changes though I did was the pitch of these stairs that go up. I modified them. Previously, there were no blocks put in between the stairs here. It was just the stairs going up evenly like this, and it was too shallow of a pitch. So the one in the movie is a good bit steeper than that. Played around with it for a little bit, trying to get a good combination of stairs and steps and slabs even. What I eventually decided on doing was just alternating between a stair, a block, and then putting a stair on top of that block. To get a pretty good angle, which is almost dead on, in my opinion, to how it looks in the movie. So I think it looks a lot better there. Now obviously it's also done on this side as well. And then in the middle here, it was done as well. And then the other most noticeable change are with the details on the front here. So for some reason, when I was building this originally, I never included these indents that are represented in the movie. It was just a flat wall here. So I decided to put those in so it's more accurate. And to help with that, I decided to change out the brick that's inside those indents, once again with the deep slate tiles like I did down here, and that just helps make it look darker, like there's more of a shadow there. So it tricks your eye into thinking that the indent is more pronounced than it actually is. And that especially helps on these side ones right here, because since this is a circle, it was really tricky to do this indent here if I were just using the regular old stone bricks, or the deep slate bricks in here. You would almost not even really tell that there's an indent at all. So putting in a darker block there really helps sell the effect a little bit better. Up on top here, the smokestacks didn't change. I did add in the pipes that connect them, and then I added in this detail here that's also seen very briefly in the movie of the pipes back here. I'll just mention this now since we're up here. I did add in smoke effects to a few of the smokestacks. I didn't want to put it in every single chimney because I think that would look a little bit too, I feel like saying too fake doesn't really make sense for a game where everything's built out of blocks, but I think it would look too fake having smoke coming out of all the smokestacks. So in the movie, actually, in various shots, you actually only see smoke coming out of a few chimneys at a time anyway. So that's what I decided to do here. So, you know, really only like half of them or less have smoke coming out, and I think that looks really cool, so I'm pretty happy with that. I think I've greatly underestimated how long this video is going to be, so once again I apologize. Once we get inside the factory, it should hopefully pick up speed a little bit. But there are quite a few more things I need to talk about on the outside first. Triangle things here, and then this curved glass piece. So my original versions on the triangle were very similar to these stairs, where I just had the constant line of stairs going down. So the pitch of this angle was a lot more shallow, which I didn't like. What ended up happening was, because it came down like this, it actually went right up against the wall here, which isn't how it should be. It's supposed to come down steeper like it is depicted now, with a little flat spot down here connecting to the wall. So once again, I messed around with the variation of steps and stairs to get a new angle that I liked. I also replaced the windows blocks because I tried doing some research, and from what I could tell, it looked like there was never actually glass here, so my original version was inaccurate. So I once again replaced them with a darker brick, just to try to help create a little bit of a shadow. And it's so hidden that I was okay doing that. Once again, I don't usually like texturing, but I think it's okay here. And then on the back is pretty similar, I think, to how it originally was. I don't really remember, but I once again added in the darker blocks to create a little bit more of a shadow. But the main changes with this thing here, this glass wall, I was never happy with how mine originally looked, but I just didn't really feel like spending the time redoing it because I knew it was going to be a pain. I think it looks pretty darn good. I think it looks a lot better than the old one. I think it looks as accurate to the movie as it can be reasonably recreated in Minecraft. The main thing that allowed me to do this was because I made this angle more steep. That meant I have a lot more space right here to add in a bigger glass wall, basically. So that's what I did. I spent a lot of time trying to mess with the curvature to make it look appropriate radius for how it was in the movie, so I'm pretty happy with how that came out. And then perhaps the biggest change was originally for the little kind of like spider web design that you see in the movie. I originally accomplished that using just full-size blocks. Originally they were white, and then I changed it to gray, but it just didn't really look right because the blocks were too clunky. And now since I had more space, I wanted to try to recreate it more closely to the movie. So I ended up using, deep slate walls for that. And I just spent a lot of time basically trying to come up with a pattern for it. I think it looks really good. I think it's a lot more pronounced now from further away. Before it was almost hardly even visible unless you were trying to look for it. But now I think it takes up an appropriate amount of size like it does in the film. And then it's also was redone on the back as well for the part that's actually visible. The building itself over here, as well as this little piece, and then pretty much these buildings here did not change. The next thing I'll talk about are these little things right here. I have no idea what they'd be called or really even how to describe them. But my original version just kind of looked like crap. Originally when I built it over a year ago, I was happy with how it looked, but the more I looked at it, the more I realized how bad it was. So I once again spent like a day or two deleting the old one and coming up with a new design that's more accurate to the movie. It's not perfect. I'd say it's about 80% there. The old one was probably only like 40% accurate, so I think I about doubled the accuracy with this. I think the height and the shape it's just better, it's more accurate. And then the little black windows or whatever they are, I think came out a lot better this time than they did previously. So I'm very happy with how this came out. And then, as in the movie, there's another one that sits back here, so these are the same thing. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. Let's see, pretty much all of this side of the factory remained unchanged. The only thing that was altered was I put in some storage tanks and pipes in a more accurate location. And then these two tanks were originally down here, and I realized that was actually not accurate. They were supposed to be put up on the roof here, so I moved them up to this spot. I also added in these pipes on this side as well. Other than that, this side of the building really wasn't changed. However, the same cannot be said for the left side of the factory. This side pretty much was completely deleted and rebuilt. My original version here was essentially not based on the movie. I kind of made it up myself because I couldn't really find good pictures of it. So I just made up my own version and tried to make it look in the spirit of how I think it would look if we had a better shot of it in the movie. But I realized it just wasn't good enough because I wanted to start expanding back here, and if I wanted to expand back there, this whole area had to change to allow that to even be possible. So essentially, this side of the factory actually got a little bit smaller. So you can kind of think of it, the original version kind of continued back this way and then connected up on this side, when in reality it should have been carved out. And I also had it expand out this way a little bit more and come back, and this whole area needed to be open, not building. Yeah, basically, it needed to be an open, flat spot. So it was changed, and basically the only angle I had to work off of was an angle from the movie similar to this. So it was pretty hard to see, so I tried my best, also taking into account that I had space limitations with this part of the building, because right underneath this roof is the chocolate room. Same thing with these walls here. So this isn't totally accurate, but I physically cannot change this at all because it would actually cut into the chocolate room like this. So this had to remain as it is. But this area over here, I had the space to make it more accurate. So starting out over here with these condenser looking buildings, I modified the design a little bit to try to make them look a little bit more round and less blocky. I'm happy with how that looked. And then something I didn't have represented at all were these buildings and these pipes that hang out on the side here. So these are in the movie, they're just very hard to see. And I just kind of added them in one day. And I think it looks better. It adds more detail as opposed to them not being there, and is more accurate. So hey, it's a win-win. I just realized there's no snow on top of this one, but I will fix that another time. The other biggest change is on this part here. There's a much more detailed wall design with storage tanks and pipes, as well as the addition of these 3 pipes and a storage tank. These are now in their correct locations. And then lastly, there is a little sort of cylinder looking shape that should be on top of the roof here that I never had originally, so I put that in as well. So I'm pretty happy with how that all turned out. But this took a lot longer than you would probably think. I probably spent a few weeks trying to redo this here. Alright, so it's time to talk about by far the biggest project that was worked on since the last factory update 4 months ago, and that was the addition of the entire back train yard and warehouse area. At the time of that video being made, the factory stopped right here. It was just the main building itself, there was nothing else. Now if you pay very close attention to the up and out sequence towards the end of the movie where they shoot through the main chimney, you get a few seconds of a shot of the area behind the factory. So it's kind of hard to tell, but it's actually a bunch of train tracks of Wonka's own, train yard basically. So that's what I built. It took a long time to make. I tried my best to make it as accurate to the movie as possible on the very minimal amount of shots we got. But there are probably about 15 or so train tracks here in their correct locations. And as you can see, I populated the train tracks with a bunch of little Wonka-themed train cars. So this car right here is called a tank car, and this is actually based on a prop that was unused in the movie. If you Google Charlie and the Chocolate Factory train car prop, you'll actually get pictures of the unused prop from the movie. So I tried my best to make it look like that. And then my own design, I came up with some box cars and let's see, some flat cars that kind of add in a little bit of variation here. And also in that scene you see a bunch of little buildings scattered about, so I really just tried my best to make them look how they were in the movie. There were no angles showing the sides of the buildings, it was strictly a top-down view, so I kind of made the general perimeter of the buildings as accurate as I could, and then the actual substance of the walls of the buildings I just made up myself. I tried to add in these little pipes and conveyor belts as accurate as possible to the movie. It basically connects all the buildings together. And then same thing over in these areas with the storage tanks. I did my best to add in the storage tanks where they were placed in the film. Talking about these pipes and conveyors once again, you'll see I kind of made an elaborate pipe system over here. This was not in the movie, but I wanted to come up with a plausible way that the workers would be able to extract the contents of the cars and suck them into the buildings to be used in the factory. So I developed this little thing. It's just a bunch of pipes with hoppers that the train cars would park underneath, and then it would suck them out into this main building over here. Now in some way or another, all of these buildings are connected via pipes or conveyors of something. So the idea I like to think of in my head is that this whole back area is like storage, shipping facilities, and they all get pumped or transported via pipes into the main factory where they're actually turned into candy and chocolate. Now you'll notice here that I have the factory wall continuing the whole way around. This wasn't really in the movie, but for my own map here I needed to make sure that there was no way for you to get into the factory by just simply walking in the back here. So it's all gated off around the train tracks, and the wall goes around the whole thing. So that eventually, whenever the town is finished, right now it's only about half finished, whenever the town is done, you can't just, enter the factory before I want you to, by coming in the back here. Now, this area is almost finished. The only thing that still needs to be done is I need to continue these little roads. I need to add some of them in back here, and then this whole area will basically be done. And then yeah, so I'm really happy with how this whole thing turned out. Also, a new little building was added over here, as well as roads on this side. I'm really happy with how this turned out. This actually technically doubles the size almost of the factory, at least in terms of length. The build now is about twice as large as it used to be. So I think it's pretty cool. One thing that I also still need to add to the rest of the exterior are the little red Wonka delivery trucks that you see at the beginning of the movie. I need to build those still, and I'm going to place them all throughout the courtyard area and then on these roads. And I'll put some back here as well to fill in some of this blank space. So I think it'll look really good when it's done. It's really cool to sort of, just come back here and explore and see what everything is all about. So I'm really happy with how that whole thing turned out. And that pretty much is it in terms of changes to the exterior.